Thunderdome. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. The rules are simple, there are no rules. It's a fight to the death in this gladiator arena. A swift way to put an end to any disagreements in Bartertown. A city of travelers, traders, and everything in between. Mad Max finds himself stranded in the desert outside of Bartertown, chasing an airborne pilot that stole his vehicle and his camels. Upon entering Bartertown, he makes a deal with the devil, or Tina Turner, the leader of this haven, offering Max transportation, gas, water, anything he desires, if he will be her champion in secret, to take down her adversary in Thunderdome. But that's going to be easier said than done, because she wants to take down Master Blaster, the 2-man duo that runs Underworld, the refinery that powers Bartertown by generating methane gas from pig feces. Blaster Master claims to control Bartertown, and that really annoys Tina Turner. Master is the brains, Blaster is the bronze. And unfortunately, Max will have to fight and kill Blaster, the humongous one. But when Max unmasks Blaster and refuses to execute him, he's exiled from Bartertown, a death sentence. And a surprise turn of events await us as we follow Mad Max beyond Thunderdome. You know, this is actually my first time watching Mad Max 3. I've had this one sitting on my shelf for the past 10 years, still in shrink wrap. I knew this one, for whatever reason, wasn't very well liked. Well, now I've seen it. This one feels very commercialized, targeting a mass audience, watering down the violence, making it much more accessible for younger audiences. If The Road Warrior is comparable to A Fistful of Dollars, Beyond Thunderdome is comparable to Peter Pan, and Return of the Jedi, and Total Recall, and The Never-Ending Story. This movie embodies 80s pop cinema in its entirety. It feels like a Hollywood money-making machine. And ironically, this one didn't make half the money Road Warrior did. Oops. Now, if you're a fan of the previous Mad Max movies, that might be a giant red flag, because they're really not aimed at general audiences. But Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome could still be a really good movie, despite any hang-ups you might have with its influences. So, let's break it down. The movie opens with Mad Max being robbed and wandering the desert, until he finds Bartertown. A town that is a character of its own, filled to the brim with a variety of fun characters, with glamorous costumes, extravagant sets, and everything in sight is just bursting with personality and attitude. The world building in The Road Warrior was excellent, but it was extremely small in scope. It almost entirely took place at an oil pump fortress. This one has actual world building, a living, breathing city, brimming with personality and detail. The movie will go beyond these walls too, but we'll get to that down the road. It's easy to see the appeal of the setting. It's bigger, it's layered, and there's a whole lot of saxophone. This movie is literally shittier than the previous entries, but there's a lot of charm here, and a similar sense of humor as the previous movies. And how can you not love Thunderdome? It's basically a playground WWE match with harnesses, and melee weapons mounted at the top of the cage. The cage itself is completely coated by the crowd itself, screaming and cheering. The fight itself is awesome, it's a lot of fun, and it's unique. It's creative. It's a definite high point of the movie. There's plenty of nail-biting moments, and it goes on exactly as long as it should. But this movie takes a drastic turn after he busts the deal, and he must spin the wheel, and he's sentenced to death by exile. It's out here in the desert that he'll be found by the Lost Boys, this group of children that have been surviving in this oasis all this time. The kids have been left behind after this plane crash, and the adults from the wreckage promised to return. And they searched for civilization, never to return. So these kids have waited, for a confusing amount of time, for the prophesized return of the airplane captain, to take them all the way to Tomorrowland. It's actually a really neat idea, for a family movie. But still, it's different. Max thinks this is a pretty sweet deal. He can just live here, relax. Just forget about all this blood and oil nonsense. But by being here, he's caused a rift in the group, and it splits into two factions. Those who stay behind, and the tribe who left. To discover what lies back where Max came from. Max will try to rescue the kids from the quicksands of the desert, and they'll be left with no choice but to press forward, back to Bartertown. They decide to break out Master so that he can help them escape, and there's a whole lot of excitement and action, but this time with children. And they plan to escape using a giant train drilling rig thingy. Bartertown starts exploding. It was at this point that for the second time watching this, I audibly muttered, "What the fuck is going on?" Tina Turner tells the town to hunt down Mad Max and those pesky children. And then we get some good old-fashioned vehicular combat. And Max gets to drive this thing, so that's cool. This all pretty much ends exactly like The Road Warrior, with narration from a child affected by Max. Just not quite as good. And that's Thunderdome. It's very easy to see why it's so polarizing. On the technical side, it's very impressive. It's cinematic, it's well made. On the spiritual side, something is off. It's targeted to younger audiences. It's lost its bite, its edge. Some of the defining features of Mad Max. But you know what? I think the good outweighs the bad. It's a very dumb movie that's kind of a joy to watch. They took a different direction, and maybe it wasn't the best direction, but at least it's different, and not just a retread of The Road Warrior. It's far from a perfect movie, but I think it's perfectly enjoyable.